Hi, I'm Anthony Ward and welcome to this tutorial for 3D World magazine. Over the next series of videos, what we're going to do is take the sketch you can see before you and convert it into a fully 3D illustration. So we're going to model her, UV her, well UV parts of her, apply shaders, lighter, renderer, and then composite all the different render passes to give us the final image. Now I'm going to try, if possible, I'm going to try and keep this tutorial non-application specific, so you can follow along and use anything that you need. Obviously there'll be times when I'm using tools that may not be in your chosen application, but feel free to adapt, as you'll probably have something similar that you could use. What I'm also going to do is I'm not going to get too hung up on all the intricacies and the details. This will just sort of be a basic overview of the process that I'm going to be using, so I won't go into details about specific tools, etc. Again, this is all just to try and keep it non-application specific, so it's open to more users. So with that being said, we have our concept that we're going to work from, so it makes sense for us to start off by creating the focal point, the little girl, who I'm going to call Boo. So let's just get rid of that and open up my application of choice. Now this is never sent to Silo, but like I say, use anything that you like. This is going to be purely subdivision surface modelling, so any other application will do. So let's start off with her head. Let me just bring back the concept. So we've got a nice simple design, circular head, button type eyes, and then a simple body with the wrists and the hands looking quite big, and I suspect the feet will be the same too. Let's just minimize that. So rather than start with a sphere, I'm going to start with a cube. Now I'm starting with a cube because we can subdivide that a couple of times and that gives us a nice quadrant sphere. Whereas if I create a sphere, just to demonstrate, we already have triangles in the top, so when we subdivide it we could end up with pinching around these areas. So I tend to try and use cubes rather than spheres, although saying that I'll probably use spheres for the eyes. Right, let's delete that. Now I've added two subdivisions to that and I'm just going to bake that subdivision. So we've got all that geometry baked into the model. Now again, we can smooth it again, smooth shade mode, just so we can see what we've got. Now, and then we're just going to adjust the overall shape just to get something similar to what's in the concept. From the side. Now I've got the concept over to the side of the screen, so if you see me glancing over and pausing for a second, I'm just looking at the concept. What I'm going to do is just flatten the front of her face slightly, like so, and then we'll make the back just a bit bigger and a bit rounder. So like I say, it's just a simple face to start us off. Just move that up because this is going to be a head. So working down from that, we then want to create a neck. So I'm just going to extrude some faces out like so. Well, actually, I'll undo that and scale those in first so the neck's a bit thinner. And then we'll add another extrude, pulling that down. And then we can add another one just to build up some basic pieces of the body. And just delete the bottom faces there to open that up, and then we can just go in and use the smooth tools just to round that off. Same up here, smooth that, and then push it back up. So there you can see we've got the head and we're starting to work in the body. Now I'm going to turn on symmetry modelling so we can work on both sides at the same time. And now we're just going to start to fill out the body shape. just extruding sections, pulling them down like so, and then we'll go around the back and just fill out the shape. Like that. Just pull these round so they match this line going down the centre there. That's quite important for when we're building the arms. So the arms we're going to extrude from here, but we need to have 8 sections around. So we've got 3, 4, 5, 6. So what I'm going to do is just create a cut around there, and I'll slide that down so it's about even, and that will give us our 8 divisions around the arm. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. What we can do now is use that as a starting point for our arm. Again, we can go around here and just smooth it, just to soften that area. And we'll delete these caps at the end just to open that up. And now we just want to try and even it out as well. Now what we're doing here is we're just blocking in the basic shape. Once we've got the shape in place, we can then go in and refine the topology and work in some more details until we're a lot happier with the shape. Now the arm at the moment isn't round, it's this oval shape, so we'll just round that off. Like I said in the introduction, I don't want to get too caught up in all the tiny details. This is just going to be a general overview of the building process that I often follow. So again, we'll just pull this out for the arm, and then for the hand, this is why we needed 8 divisions around, so we can do an equal cap at the end to create the arm. So we'll create a bridge there. Actually, we will create a bridge there. 1, 2, and then fill this one in. And that gives us 3 quads at the end of her arm. So if I extrude that just to solidify it slightly. Now it's twisted a bit because of the nature of the topology, so we'll just rotate that round. We can refine the shape, as I say, later as we're going. But now we have these 3 in place, we can extrude that, pull those out, and we've got the starting points of her 3 fingers. Just reduce that down, pull that up, like so. And we can use this quad here to give her a thumb, just by extruding this. And then just rotate that out, like so. And what we can do is we can just add another subdivision just to soften that a little bit more, and then we can just continue on working in a bit more detail into the hands. Like for example, this could be where the joint is, so we'll just give a slight bend in there. We can just lift this section up here just to fill out the back of the hand slightly. And we can see here where they've got that twist. We just need to work on that too. But then, like I say, we've got the topology in place so that we can now tweak this. So if we go back to our concept, we can see the arms start off quite thin, but then they fill out towards the end and then turn into the fingers. So we need to make sure we keep that wrist area quite thick. again, just add another subdivision to the thumb, like so. And then it's just tweaking the shape of these fingers, rounding them off. At the moment they're not very round, but we've got the geometry there to play with now, so we can work on this a bit more. And what I want to do is, at the end of each finger, I want to add a little hint of detail. Now, because this is a cartoony, stylized type character, I don't want to go over the top, building in muscles, building in full finger knuckles and fingernails, etc. But what I do want is just a hint of detail at the end of each finger, just to give it an extra bit of interest. So what we can do is select the joints at the end, well, select the tips at the end, and just bevel those, and just adjust that. And what that does, if I turn off wireframe, as you can see, it just gives a hint of fingernails, which is just what we need. So we need to apply that to the thumb. I'll just undo that for now as we continue to work on the shape. Like so. Now, what we could do is even just build in an extra joint here, which again will just allow us to add in a little bit of detail, and when we'll come to pose her later, this will also help, because she'll have the joints in there for us to pose. So if we pull that up, it just gives us that knuckle. Pull that down like so. And obviously all the fingers don't need to be the same size, so we can adjust these too and make sure they're spaced properly. All these are just little tweaks which you can go in and refine later. Fill out the hand here. Now, I'm not going to get too caught up on any more details there. All I'm going to do is just work on the overall shape, add in those fingernail tips that I mentioned earlier, and then we'll come back to that, and just like I say, just work on the shape of the arms so they more match the concept. So let's move on and go down the body, and now we're going to we may as well give her some legs. So again, just going to continue this down like so. We'll just move this up, and this edge loop up as well. Now we need to separate this area, so I'm just going to give it a bevel, and then I'm going to delete these polygons at the front, and then we can bridge these inside like so, and that's just giving us the starting point for the legs. And we just need to create another cut around the middle on the inside here, just to space out the geometry a bit more, just so we can round that off nicely as well. And again, just select those and smooth. And now we've got the starting point, we can then continue this down, and from this we can start to create the feet. So I'll create an extra extrude at the bottom, select the 3 polygons at the front, and then we'll pull these out. Like that. As you can see, we're starting to get that foot feel. And just like with the arms, it's just a case of tweaking this shape, perhaps adding another bevel at the ankle, just to get more of an angle there. Just merge these triangles because we want to try and not have too many triangles. It's okay, the merge key isn't working for some reason. Never mind. You can just use them the old-fashioned menus. So again, we'll just bring this up like that. And then, as with the hands, we need to give a hint of toes. So I'll extrude that there, extrude that there, and then pull these out, and this will give us the topology which we can mould into the shape of our toes. And there we go. And we have to remember to fill in the bottom as well. We can do this with a few simple bridges, filling in holes. Now just make sure you bridge the right areas. Fill in that there. We still have a gap there. We'll just fill that in for now. What we can do is we can play around with that shape, smooth that out there. Just look at my reference. Like so. And if we need to, we can add in a few more edge loops. And then it's just refining that shape. And of course, we'll do the same here. We'll bevel these edges at the end just to give the hint of the toenails. So what we've done there is we've very quickly blocked out the shape. Now this is just getting the topology in there. We can now go and take under the next step and add in a bit more detail, refine the shape, and we also want to add in button eyes as well. Again, they're just spheres, so I won't show you how to create those. I'm sure you're quite capable of creating a sphere, adjusting it, and putting it in place. Right, I've started now, so I may as well continue. What I'll do is numerical editor. Just going to rotate that exactly so it's pointing exactly out to the front. I'm going to flatten that eye as well, because we don't want it to be completely round. Like so, and then we will just shrink that. Could have her as a cyclops, I suppose. Move this over and just make sure we also rotate it so it aligns with the curve of the head. You can help, this will help by following the edge loop around the middle there. So if we say that's just a rough eye, modify, mirror that geometry. Now again, very, very rough. So with the topology in place, that gives us the foundations then to start reshaping and moulding the shape of our figure into something a little bit more like this. As you can see, as I mentioned in the previous video, I've beveled the ends of each finger and the thumb, and also the front of the toes, just to give a little hint of detail, and it just sort of hints at the fingernails or the toenails, and just makes it look a bit more interesting. I've also added in a few extra loops around the joints, just so we can, when we come to pose her later, we can bend quite easily, but we can also, when we come to pose her, add in more geometry if we need it. So now we have this figure, but it's quite unisex. Could be a boy, could be a girl, could be an alien, we don't really know. So let's now take it to the next level, dress it so it looks a bit more like the concept image. Speaking of which, let me just bring this back. So here we can see her again. We need to add in a dress and also her hair, so we will look at those next. Now for the dress, it's quite simple. We already have geometry here, which will work quite well. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select the geometry around her torso, like so. Just deselect this around her neck, because we don't need all this. And as you can see, that already looks like some sort of shirt. So if I duplicate that, we'll just soften that as well. And I'm just going to do a local scale just to pull that out of the model a bit, like so. Smooth shade. And there we have the starting point to the dress. Nice and simple. You can just pull down the edges at the bottom, flare those out, and then maybe bevel around her waist just to pinch that area in slightly. I'll just scale that up a bit more. Like so. Just gives it a bit more shape. Hide that wireframe. Like so. Pull those in. But you get the general idea there. So what I'll do is I will merge those and redo that bevel. Just now we've moved it, that's better. So we've got a bit of a crease around the centre. We've got the skirt for the dress. Now we need to just add in a bit more detail. Now we could select every other vert and scale them in, and that'll give us a bit of a wave to the dress. But I want a bit more detail than that. So what I'm going to do is just select these edges and cut them. Do that all the way around. Like so. So all those are cut. And then I can select every other edge. So in effect the ones that I've just cut. Scale those in. Like that. And we've got more of a shape to the bottom of a skirt. Now that could do with a bit more work, a bit more TLC, but you get the general idea with that. Now up at the top here, I just turn on symmetry mode, so we're working on both sides. Again, this area needs a bit more TLC, but it's just about refining the shape. Once we've got that topology in there, just like with the body, we can then go in and play around with it until we get a shape we're happy with. So you get the idea with that. And then to make these edges a bit more interesting and look a little flat, little less flat, we can just extrude those, pull those in, and it just gives a little bit of a lip to the edges of the dress and gives it some thickness. Like so, and that looks a lot more interesting than this around her neck. But we can do the same there as well. But there we have a very basic dress. You can just play around with that shape now until you get something you're a little bit more happy with. So moving on, let's now take a look at her hair. Again, if we look at our concept image, it looks like, rather than it being separate little individual strands of hair, like in real hair, this is built up of blocks, which will then have detail applied on it, no doubt with a texture or a normal map. So what we need to do is just build these strips which block out the main sections of her hair. Now that's quite easy to do. What we can do is just start with a cube and reshape this into one strand. So we'll say it's coming from the top of her head there, back a bit more maybe, and then we just extrude these and shape them into one of the strands of her fringe. Sort of like that. Then if I smooth it just to see what we're looking at. It just looks like she's got some sort of slug on her head. So we'll just reshape these so it gets thinner towards the point where all the hair is going to meet. Just pull it away from her head as well. So we end up with something like that. And then we're just going to select all the edges and bevel them. Because in the concept image it's looking quite square, the strands of her hair. But we don't need these bends here. So we'll just go back in and get rid of those. Just smooth shade that. And there we have one basic strand of her hair. Again, it's just simple shapes. If we want to, we can add another cut in there. And just tweak the shape, just to make it a bit more interesting. Maybe towards the end, scale that in slightly. And maybe taper it as well. So we get a bit more of a flick. Something like that anyway. But once you've got one that you're happy with, you can then easily just duplicate and rotate that around the rest of the head. So if I make sure I move the pivot of this model back here, so this is where it's going to rotate from, and then I just duplicate, it'll let me, that's it. Duplicate, rotate, then duplicate both those two, rotate, then duplicate all four, rotate, and you get the general idea there. It's just follow that all the way around. Obviously the hair at the back of the head will need to be longer, so maybe take one of these strands, make it longer, and then rotate that around the back of the head. But what I'll do now is I will just pause the video while I load in a version that I've tweaked and adjusted earlier. So here she is, with the dress tweaked and refined. As you can see, I've added another section of dress underneath, but that's just a duplicate of this one. I've also added some more cuts in around here just to give it a bit more of a fabric feel. And her hair, I've copied around the back of her head, and I've also created another layer inside just to give it some thickness, and I may even do a third layer under here, just depending on how it looks when we get into Maya and how things are looking when we come to render. But there we have a pretty much finished character, and it didn't take too long. She's quite simple in construction, but I think she looks quite effective. So we've created the little girl, Boo, which is the main character of this illustration. So now we're going to move on to the next one, which is the actual snail that she's holding. Now to start us off, we may as well just go and create a cube. And what I'm going to do is just delete most of that. So we've just got a plane, essentially. So you might be easier for you to just create a polygon plane. And what we're going to do with this is we're just going to block out the shape, the spiral shape of the shell. I'll just turn off soft selection, which I had on by accident. So we'll say that's the middle. We're just going to extrude some edges out. We'll subdivide that so we can see what it looks like smoothed. So, and we're just going to, let's rotate that slightly. We're just going to pull these around very quickly just to get the main shape which we want. And we're going to try and pair these up with the corresponding vertices on the other side. And you'll see why we're going to do that in a minute. Don't worry about problems like this because they'll disappear. So again, That could probably pair up with that, and then this could pair up with that one. So we just pull these around just to smooth this out. Like that. Again, just pair these up. Bring it right round till we get to about here. So this will be the top of the shell. The spiral will come out around and down here. So I'll just pull that around there, so that will join up with that one. This will join up with the opening. Now again, it looks a bit messy, but we will fix that now. So now we're just going to go in and bridge these holes here. Bridge that one, bridge that one. Essentially just filling in the gaps, bridge those, and then finally we will fill that one in. Now we have those filled in, we can just go in again and just tweak this shape a bit more. Just to get something we're a bit more happy with. As you can see there, we've sort of built in the spiral in the middle. What we're going to do now is just create a cut right around the middle. Then we'll come back into our perspective view, give that some depth, so we can just see where it is in relation to everything else. Now going back into the side view, now we can see it in 3D, we can work on this a bit more. We can maybe collapse some of these edges in here to tidy this up. Maybe made one edge too much. That's fine in there. So again, let's just pull these around just to get a better shape. And just like with Boo, the little girl, it's all about just getting in the main topology, and then when you're happy with that, you can just play around. Until you get a better shape that you need. So that's very rough, the side of the shell. What we're going to do now is just give the top some depth as well. So I'll just come down here, extrude and pull that back. We also need to leave an opening, so I'm just going to delete this polygon at the bottom. So here we have the area that's open. There we have the spiral of the shell. Just smooth shade that. Hide that wireframe. As you can see, we've started to build in this spiral here. Again, it's only basic, but then again, this is for an illustration. It's not for any sort of super high detailed snail model, sorry. So what we can probably do is join that up with there. Let's see what that does. That gives us a little curl there, which works quite nicely. And again, we can go back into the side view, maybe subdivide it one more time. And again, just play around with these shapes to get a nice flow of that spiral in the centre. Pull these up, and this can come up like so. Like that. So we've got a nice curve going on there. This being the entrance here. What I'll do is we want a bit more geometry in here, so I'm just going to create a cut from there down to the bottom here. That'll just give us an extra bit of geometry to play around with. Just like that. So we've got one half of the shell. Let's just move that over so it's on this grid line here, and we'll just mirror that. And as you can see there, we've just got a basic shell shape with a nice curve in the middle, this nice coil here, and we can just adjust these if we want to make that a bit deeper, and maybe widen the top slightly here. Like that. But you can play around with the shape now with that until you get something closer resembling what you want. And at the bottom here, we'll just give this opening some depth as well. Scale that out just to give it a little bit of a lip. Something like that anyway. But moving on, say we've got the shell created, we now want to create the snail that lives in this shell. Just move that up above the grid. Lift this up slightly, because this is going to be where he's peeking out. So we've got a curve there. So again, we'll just start with a cube. Subdivide that a couple of times, and then it's just extruding out his shape. Like so, just build a basic head. So that will be where his head will be. Then we've got his tail down here. But we need the bottom area here to be flattened off slightly. So we will just select these areas around the bottom and bevel them, and that flattens off the bottom area of the snail. That will be the area which moves along the ground. Like that. What I'll do is I'll just create a cut down the middle, and we'll see if symmetry will turn on for this. That's it. So again, we can just adjust these shapes to get a snail shape. Just smooth shade that so we can see. Just smooth the sides. Smooth. Like that. Like that. That just smooths him off. We'll just get hold of his tail here. Pull that back and then squash the top to create the point of his tail. We'll need to adjust the shell at the back slightly to fit there, but this will do for now. And then just bring that out to point it. So we need to create his antennae now. What we'll do is we will bevel this at the top, and then that will allow us to extrude these areas out and pull them up, because these have been separated. So now we can merge these again, just to close those off and get rid of those triangles. And then we've got the start of the antennae. So again, we can just extrude these, pull them up and back, scale those in just to get the shape. Oops. And then soften that off. And we can use these antennae in a way to show expressions, because the snails, even though he's got eyes, well, he will have eyes like the little girl character has, just button eyes. You can't really express emotion with those. So what we'll probably do is have these sagging down, like when because he's sad. He's been picked up by this little girl and he's no idea what's going to happen. So he's a bit scared. So we could maybe have these folded down to show that he's scared. So you get the idea with the snail there. We've blocked out the shape. We've created his shell. What I'll do is I will load in one that I've worked on a little bit more, just to show you where I've taken it. So here's the one that I've tweaked just a little bit more. I've added in the button eyes, and that'll just tie it in with the style of Boo. We've got the snail body, we've got his tail sticking out, and the shell there sits nicely on his body. What I've also done is I've also beveled this edge here just to harden that edge just a little bit more. It just adds to the style, and continued this down and round here, and that should catch the light nicely. Now you're probably wondering why I bother beveling these edges when you can just crease them. That's mainly because this will be exported and taken into another application, and by doing that you will lose any crease information, so you'll end up having to put that back in. By using a bevel instead, it means when you smooth this later on, it will keep those creases in, so you don't need to add them in later. And also with a bevel, you can sometimes get a lot nicer light on the curves rather than a crease, which can sometimes be a bit harsh. So that's the snail creation. There are some other bits of scenery which I need to build, but to be honest, they're just leaves and stones and things, quite basic shapes, so I'll probably build those separately and then we can examine those in a future video. For now, continue with your snail, do any more work on the Boo character that you want to, and then we can proceed to the next stage, which will be to bring them in both into the same scene and start to pose Boo so that she's holding the snail and kneeling on the floor like in the concept image.